the spotlight burns with an intensity few can comprehend. For the legends who've shaped the soundtracks of our lives, that blinding glare often conceals a darker reality, one where the euphoria of creation and adulation collides with the crushing weight of expectation, scrutiny, and inner demons. Behind the gold records, sold-out arenas, and revolutionary sounds that defined generations lies a shadow narrative. The battle with addiction that has claimed talents too magnificent to comprehend, dimmed lights too brilliant to extinguish, and altered trajectories that seem destined for the stratosphere. This exploration of 25 musical icons from R&B, pop, and rock isn't meant to sensationalize their struggles or reduce their legacies to cautionary tales. Rather, it seeks to understand the complex interplay between artistic genius and human vulnerability. How the same sensitivity that allows artists to channel raw emotion into transcendent music can leave them susceptible to substances that promise relief, escape, or enhancement. From the early rock pioneers who established not just musical traditions, but patterns of excess, through the psychedelic explosion of the 60s and 70s, the cocaine-fueled excesses of the 80s, to the prescription drug epidemics of more recent decades, we'll journey chronologically through the lives of legends whose relationships with substances profoundly shaped their art, careers, and ultimately, their legacies. These stories span decades and genres, revealing how addiction recognizes neither the boundaries of musical style nor the passage of time. In their struggles, triumphs, relapses, and recoveries, these 25 artists reveal something profound about the nature of creativity, fame, and the human condition. Their music changed the world, and their battles with addiction changed them. Elvis Presley. The king of rock and roll's tragic descent into prescription drug dependency represents perhaps the most iconic fall in music history. Born in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1935, Elvis Aaron Presley revolutionized popular music, blending rhythm and blues with country to create a sound and performance style that shattered racial and cultural barriers. With his swiveling hips, unmistakable voice, and smoldering gaze, Elvis became not just a musician, but a cultural force that fundamentally altered American entertainment. By the late 1960s, however, the pressures of fame, a stagnating film career, and the changing musical landscape began to weigh heavily on Presley. His addiction to prescription medications, particularly amphetamines, opiates, and sedatives, escalated dramatically. Dr. George Nicopolis, infamously known as Dr. Nick, prescribed Elvis over 10,000 pills in the last 8 months of his life alone. The king's daily regimen included Demerol, Dilaudid, Dexedrine, Placidil, and countless other pharmaceuticals, creating a toxic cocktail that ravaged his once magnificent physique and dimmed his legendary charisma. This haunting performance of Unchained Melody from 1977 shows a bloated, sweating Elvis just months before his death. His voice still powerful, but his body clearly ravaged by years of prescription drug abuse. The consequences were devastating. Elvis gained substantial weight, suffered from glaucoma, hypertension, and liver damage. His erratic behavior became legendary, shooting television sets, rambling incoherently during performances, and isolating himself in his Graceland mansion. On August 16, 1977, at just 42, Elvis was found unconscious in his bathroom and pronounced dead from cardiac arrhythmia, though the cocktail of 14 drugs in his system undoubtedly contributed to his heart failure. Elvis's death transformed him from cultural icon to tragic legend. His struggle with prescription medications highlighted the dangers of celebrity doctors and legal drug abuse decades before the opioid crisis entered public consciousness. Yet, through it all, his musical legacy remains undiminished. The voice that launched 1,000 rock dreams still resonates with an emotional authenticity that transcends his tragic end. Billie Holiday. Lady Day's harrowing relationship with heroin and alcohol stands as one of jazz's most heartbreaking narratives. Born Eleanora Fagan in 1915 to a teenage mother in Philadelphia, Holiday transformed a childhood marred by poverty, abuse, and racism into a revolutionary musical career. Her distinctive vocal phrasing, emotional depth, an ability to transform even the most banal lyrics into profound statements of human experience made her one of the most influential vocalists in American music history. Holiday's introduction to heroin came in the early 1940s through her first husband, Jimmy Monroe. The racism and harassment she faced as a black female performer in Jim Crow America, combined with the trauma of her early life, made the escape offered by narcotics particularly seductive. Soon, heroin and alcohol became constant companions, providing temporary refuge from a world that celebrated her artistry while denying her humanity. This rare footage shows Holiday performing Strange Fruit in 1959, just months before her death, her voice weathered by years of substance abuse, but still conveying the song's devastating power. Federal Bureau of Narcotics Commissioner Harry Anslinger targeted Holiday with particular viciousness, assigning agents to track her and ultimately arresting her in 1947. Her year-long imprisonment did nothing to address her addiction, and when she emerged, her cabaret card, essential for performing in New York clubs, had been revoked, devastating her career. Despite a brief resurgence with the Verve label in the 1950s, Holiday's health continued to deteriorate. In May 1959, Holiday was hospitalized for liver and heart disease. Even on her deathbed, she faced the indignity of being arrested for drug possession, with police officers stationed outside her room. On July 17, 1959, with just 70 cents in her bank account, Lady Day died at age 44. Holiday's legacy transcends her tragic end. Her autobiography, Lady Sings the Blues, later adapted into a film starring Diana Ross, brought attention to addiction as a health issue rather than a moral failing. Songs like Strange Fruit remain searing indictments of American racism. Most importantly, her unique vocal approach fundamentally altered the trajectory of jazz and popular singing, influencing everyone from Frank Sinatra to Amy Winehouse, another artist whose brilliance would be cut short by addiction. Charlie Parker, Bird, soared higher and fell harder than perhaps any other jazz innovator.
Award for the best alto sax man of 1951.
His heroin addiction becoming as legendary as his revolutionary bebop saxophone playing. Born in Kansas City in 1920, Parker transformed jazz in the 1940s with his lightning-fast improvisations, harmonic innovations, and rhythmic complexity. Alongside Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, and others, Parker created bebop, a challenging, virtuosic approach that elevated jazz from dance music to high art. Parker's relationship with substances began early.
Staying at the California Club on a Monday night in Los Angeles. We took advantage of the fact that Bird had died to announce to the people.
He started drinking heavily as a teenager and was introduced to morphine after a car accident at age 16. By the early 1940s, he had graduated to heroin, which would remain his primary demon for the rest of his life. The mythology surrounding Parker, that his genius was fueled by his addiction, led countless young musicians down the same destructive path, with many believing that heroin was somehow essential to authentic jazz expression. This rare footage shows Parker performing Hot House with Dizzy Gillespie in 1952, displaying his extraordinary virtuosity despite years of heroin addiction that would claim his life just 3 years later. The consequences of Parker's addiction were severe and relentless. His unreliability became legendary. He would miss performances, pawn his saxophone for drug money, and appear on stage in states ranging from brilliance to incoherence. In 1946, following a catastrophic breakdown, he spent 6 months at Camarillo State Mental Hospital in California. Though he emerged clean and produced some of his finest recordings in the following period, sobriety proved fleeting. By the early 1950s, Parker's health was in rapid decline. His body, ravaged by heroin, alcohol, and poor nutrition, began to fail him. On March 12, 1955, while watching television in the Manhattan apartment of Baroness Panonica de Koenigswarter, a patron of jazz musicians, Parker suffered a heart attack and died at just 34. The coroner estimated his age at between 50 and 60. So severe was the physical toll of his addiction. Despite his brief life, Parker's musical innovations permanently altered jazz's DNA. His compositions like Ornithology, Yardbird Suite, and Coco remain standards, while his approach to improvisation created an entirely new vocabulary for generations of musicians across all genres. The inscription on his tombstone, "Bird Lives," proved prophetic, as his music continues to inspire more than 6 decades after his death. Judy Garland.
Karen spent her life singing about bluebirds, but she died without ever finding them. She was found dead on the bathroom floor.
Few stars burned as brightly or paid as devastating a price for their talent as Judy Garland. Born Frances Ethel Gumm in 1922, Garland possessed a voice of extraordinary emotional power that belied her small stature. Signed to MGM at 13, she quickly became one of Hollywood's most bankable stars after her iconic performance as Dorothy in 1939's The Wizard of Oz. Garland's relationship with substances began not as a choice, but as exploitation. Louis B. Mayer and other MGM executives routinely prescribed amphetamines to child actors to maintain their energy through punishing filming schedules, while barbiturates were administered at night to ensure sleep. By age 16, Garland was caught in a studio-sanctioned cycle of uppers and downers that would haunt her for life. Simultaneously, executives constantly criticized her weight and appearance, planting the seeds for lifelong body image issues and insecurity. This heartbreaking performance of Over the Rainbow from 1963 shows Garland's voice still magnificent, but her body and spirit clearly damaged by decades of substance abuse and exploitation. As Garland matured, the consequences of her studio-induced addiction became increasingly apparent. She attempted suicide multiple times, including a highly publicized incident in 1950 when she slashed her throat with broken glass. Her behavior became erratic, leading to her firing from MGM in 1950. Though she experienced career resurgences, notably with 1954's A Star Is Born and her legendary 1961 Carnegie Hall concert, her reliability issues and health problems persisted. Garland's personal life reflected her inner turmoil. She married 5 times and struggled financially despite her enormous talent and fame. By the late 1960s, she was severely malnourished, relying on pills and increasingly unable to perform consistently. On June 22, 1969, her 5th husband, Mickey Deans, found her dead in their London bathroom. The coroner ruled the cause as an accidental overdose of barbiturates. She was just 47. Garland's legacy extends far beyond her tragic end. Her emotional vulnerability and resilience made her an enduring gay icon. Her daughter Liza Minnelli carried forward her theatrical tradition. Most importantly, performances like Over the Rainbow, The Man That Got Away, and the Trolley Song remain masterclasses in using technical perfection to convey raw human emotion. As her friend James Mason eulogized her, "She just gave too much." Jerry Lee Lewis, the original wild man of rock and roll, Jerry Lee Lewis lived as ferociously as he played piano.
Hey boy, you just been rocking your life away. I just am who I am, mama.
Born in 1935 in Faraday, Louisiana, the Killer exploded onto the music scene in 1957 with Whole Lotta Shakin' Going On and Great Balls of Fire. His incendiary piano style and unbridled performance energy helping define rock's rebellious spirit. With his pumping left hand and right hand glissandos, Lewis created a distinctive sound that influenced countless piano rockers who followed. Lewis's relationship with substances began early and remained consistent throughout his tumultuous life. Raised in a strict Pentecostal environment, he struggled with the contradiction between his religious upbringing and his devil's music career. This inner conflict fueled a lifelong pattern of alcohol abuse that became as much a part of his persona as his piano playing. By the late 1950s, as his career faced controversy over his marriage to his 13-year-old cousin, Myra Gale Brown, Lewis increasingly turned to whiskey for solace. This electrifying 1964 performance on British television shows Lewis at his most manic and brilliant, displaying the barely controlled chaos that defined both his music and his substance-fueled lifestyle. The consequences of Lewis's alcoholism were both spectacular and devastating. His performances became unpredictable affairs where brilliance and disaster could occur in equal measure, sometimes within the same show. He famously set his piano on fire while performing, shot his bass player in the chest, who survived, and drove his car through the gates of Graceland while intoxicated, demanding to see Elvis. His personal life was equally chaotic, with 7 marriages marked by allegations of abuse and tragedy. 2 of his sons died in accidents, and his 4th wife, Jaren Gunn Lewis, drowned in a swimming pool before their divorce was finalized. Unlike many on this list, Lewis survived his excesses, living to the remarkable age of 87 before his death in 2022. His longevity came at a cost, however. Years of alcohol abuse led to serious health problems, including bleeding ulcers that nearly killed him in 1981. He underwent double bypass surgery in 2019 and suffered a stroke the same year. Lewis's legacy remains complicated but undeniable. His influence on rock piano playing is immeasurable, and his 1989 biopic, Great Balls of Fire, starring Dennis Quaid, introduced his music to new generations. In his final decades, he achieved a measure of stability and recognition, including induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. The Killer's music, like his life, remains a testament to rock's dangerous, liberating power. Janis Joplin, raw, unfiltered, and painfully authentic, Janis Joplin transformed the blues into a primal scream that defined the late 1960s counterculture. Born in conservative Port Arthur, Texas in 1943, Joplin's powerful, raspy vocals and uninhibited stage presence shattered conventions of how women in rock should look, sound, and behave. With Big Brother and the Holding Company, and later as a solo artist, she created a body of work that married technical brilliance with emotional devastation. Joplin's relationship with substances began as an escape from the alienation she felt as an artistic, unconventional woman in conformist 1950s Texas. At the University of Texas, she began experimenting with amphetamines and occasionally heroin. After moving to San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district in 1966, her drug use escalated dramatically. Though alcohol remained her primary substance, Southern Comfort became her trademark drink. Heroin increasingly took hold as the pressures of fame mounted following her breakout performance at 1967's Monterey Pop Festival. This searing performance of Ball and Chain at Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 captures Joplin at her raw, explosive best, before heroin had significantly impacted her health and artistry. The consequences of Joplin's addiction played out publicly and painfully. Her performances, while often transcendent, became increasingly unpredictable. Friends and bandmates watched helplessly as she cycled between periods of sobriety and devastating relapses. Her romantic relationships suffered similar instability, though she attempted to get clean multiple times, including a brief period of sobriety while recording her final album, Pearl. The pull of heroin proved too strong. On October 4th, 1970, Joplin's road manager found her dead in her room at the Landmark Motor Hotel in Hollywood. The cause was a heroin overdose, possibly compounded by alcohol. She was just 27, becoming part of the tragic 27 Club alongside Jimi Hendrix, who had died just 16 days earlier, and later, Jim Morrison and Kurt Cobain. Pearl was released posthumously in 1971, featuring her most enduring hit, Me and Bobby McGee, and the haunting, unfinished Buried Alive in the Blues, with instrumental tracks but no vocals, as Joplin died before she could record them. Joplin's legacy as a feminist pioneer in rock is immeasurable. She proved women could be as raw, sexual, and powerful as any male performer. Her vocal style influenced generations of singers across genres, from Stevie Nicks to Pink. Most importantly, her willingness to transform her pain into art created a template for authentic emotional expression that remains the gold standard for performers today. Jim Morrison. The Lizard King's mythic journey from poet-shaman to alcoholic exile embodied the dark side of the 1960s counterculture dream. Born in 1943 to a military family, James Douglas Morrison transformed himself into rock's premier literary frontman as the lead singer of The Doors. With his baritone voice, hypnotic stage presence, and poetic lyrics, Morrison created a new archetype for rock performers, part Dionysian reveler, part intellectual provocateur. Morrison's relationship with substances was complex and multifaceted. While he experimented with psychedelics like LSD and peyote, which influenced the mystical aspects of his songwriting, alcohol gradually became his primary demon. By 1969, what had begun as typical rock star excess had developed into full-blown alcoholism, with Morrison often consuming entire bottles of whiskey daily. His drinking exacerbated his natural tendency toward confrontation and self-destruction, leading to increasingly erratic behavior on and off stage. This infamous 1969 Miami concert footage captures Morrison at his most provocative and self-destructive, visibly intoxicated, and ultimately leading to his arrest for alleged indecent exposure. The consequences of Morrison's alcoholism were swift and severe. His once lean physique gave way to bloating, and his voice, once capable of both whispered intimacy and powerful roars, became increasingly ragged. His performances became unpredictable spectacles, where brilliance might give way to incoherence or provocation. The most notorious incident occurred in March 1969 at Miami's Dinner Key Auditorium, where an intoxicated Morrison allegedly exposed himself, leading to his arrest and a conviction for indecent exposure and open profanity, posthumously pardoned in 2010. By 1971, Morrison's condition had deteriorated significantly. Seeking respite from his celebrity and legal troubles, he relocated to Paris with his longtime companion, Pamela Courson. On July 3, 1971, Courson found Morrison dead in the bathtub of their apartment. Though no autopsy was performed, heart failure was listed as the cause of death, almost certainly exacerbated by years of alcohol abuse. Like Joplin and Hendrix before him, Morrison was just 27. Morrison's legacy extends far beyond his brief 6 years of recording. The Doors' fusion of rock, blues, and art song created a template for countless bands that followed. His poetic aspirations helped legitimize rock lyrics as a serious literary form. Most enduringly, his charismatic shamanic performance style established a model of frontman as mystic that artists from Bono to Michael Stipe have drawn upon. In death, as in life, Morrison remains rock's dark poet, brilliant, troubled, and forever young. Keith Richards, the human riff, the ultimate rock and roll survivor, Keith Richards has built a career and mythology around his seemingly superhuman ability to consume substances that would kill ordinary mortals. Born in 1943 in Dartford, England, Richards co-founded the Rolling Stones and created some of rock's most enduring guitar riffs on classics like Satisfaction, Start Me Up, and Brown Sugar. His open G tuning and rhythmic sensibility established a guitar vocabulary that countless players have drawn from for decades. Richards' relationship with substances is the stuff of rock legend. His heroin addiction began in the late 1960s and continued well into the 1970s, accompanied by prodigious consumption of cocaine, alcohol, and whatever else was available. Unlike many addicts who hide their use, Richards was remarkably candid about his habits, once famously claiming he had snorted his father's ashes, later clarifying he had mixed them with cocaine. His ability to function creatively while heavily addicted created a dangerous mythology around heroin use in rock circles. This 1972 concert footage from the infamous Exile on Main Street tour shows Richards at the height of his heroin addiction, somehow delivering blistering guitar work despite his condition. The consequences of Richards' addiction were serious despite his survival. The Stones' productivity slowed significantly during his heaviest using periods. His legal troubles mounted, including a notorious 1977 arrest in Toronto that found him in possession of 22 grams of heroin, potentially carrying a minimum 7-year sentence. Only through an unusual plea arrangement that included the Stones performing a benefit concert for the blind was Richards able to avoid prison. His personal relationships suffered, particularly with Mick Jagger, creating tensions that nearly destroyed the band. Unlike most on this list, Richards eventually conquered his heroin addiction. Following the Toronto arrest and the birth of his son Marlon, he gradually weaned himself off heroin by the early 1980s. Though he continued to drink and use other substances for years afterward, he has maintained sobriety from hard drugs for decades. In his 2010 autobiography, Life, Richards offered unflinching details about his addiction while acknowledging the extraordinary luck that allowed him to survive when so many contemporaries did not. Now, in his late 70s, Richards represents a rare success story, an addict who not only survived, but thrived after addiction. His longevity has transformed him from cautionary tale to elder statesman of rock. The guitar techniques he developed during his most substance-addled periods continue to influence generations of players, while his weathered face and still nimble fingers serve as reminders of both the costs and the resilience of the rock and roll spirit. Sly Stone. Few musical geniuses rose as meteorically or fell as precipitously as Sylvester Stewart, better known as Sly Stone. Born in 1943 in Texas, Stone revolutionized American music in the late 1960s with Sly and the Family Stone, creating a groundbreaking fusion of funk, soul, rock, and psychedelia, with anthems like Everyday People, Stand, and I Want to Take You Higher. Stone crafted an optimistic, integrated vision of America that seemed to herald a new era of racial harmony through music. Stone's relationship with substances began amid the psychedelic experimentation of 1960s San Francisco, but took a darker turn as the decade ended. By 1970, cocaine and PCP had become his primary substances, dramatically altering both his personality and musical direction. The sunny optimism of earlier albums gave way to the paranoid funk of 1971's There's a Riot Going On, recorded largely in isolation as Stone's addiction intensified. What had begun as recreational use transformed into a 4-decade battle that would derail one of music's most promising careers. This 1974 performance on Soul Train reveals Stone's deteriorating condition, appearing disoriented and unable to lip sync properly to If You Want Me to Stay as his addiction tightened its grip. The consequences of Stone's addiction were comprehensive and devastating. His legendary unreliability became the stuff of music industry lore. He frequently missed performances or appeared hours late. The integrated, cooperative spirit of the Family Stone fractured under the weight of his behavior. His production became increasingly erratic, with brilliant flashes undermined by long periods of creative paralysis. By the mid-1970s, his career was in free fall, with albums appearing sporadically and commercial success evaporating. The subsequent decades brought further decline. Legal troubles, including arrests for cocaine possession, compounded his problems. Financial mismanagement left him nearly destitute. By the 2010s, reports emerged that Stone, once one of music's most flamboyant figures, was living in a van in Los Angeles, a particularly tragic fall for an artist of his stature. Though he made occasional appearances, including a tribute at the 2006 Grammy Awards and a 2015 memoir, I'm Just a Mortal Man, sustained comeback proved elusive. Stone's legacy remains secure despite his personal troubles. His innovations in funk laid groundwork for everything from disco to hip-hop. The integrated multi-gender composition of the Family Stone established a template for diversity in band lineup. Most importantly, songs like Family Affair and If You Want Me to Stay demonstrated how even the darkest personal circumstances could yield music of extraordinary beauty and complexity. In his brilliance and his struggles, Sly Stone embodied both the possibilities and pitfalls of musical genius. Etta James. The raw emotional power of Etta James's voice, equally adept at blues, R&B, rock and roll, gospel, and jazz, made her one of American music's most versatile and compelling interpreters. Born Jamesetta Hawkins in 1938 to a 14-year-old mother in Los Angeles, James overcame a chaotic childhood to emerge as a dominant force in 1950s R&B. Her signature songs like At Last, I'd Rather Go Blind, and Tell Mama remain definitive performances that showcase her extraordinary range from vulnerable intimacy to ferocious intensity. James's relationship with heroin began in the early 1960s, just as her career was reaching new heights with Chess Records. Her addiction quickly became severe, consuming much of her income and compromising her reliability. After a 1974 arrest, she was given a choice between prison and rehabilitation at the Tarzana Psychiatric Hospital. Though she achieved periods of sobriety, James later developed an addiction to painkillers following multiple surgeries, creating a cycle of substance abuse that would continue for decades. This powerful 1993 performance of I'd Rather Go Blind showcases James's incredible vocal abilities during a period of relative stability between her struggles with heroin and later prescription drug addiction. The consequences of James's addiction played out across both her career and personal life. During her heaviest using periods in the 1960s and 1970s, her recording output became sporadic, and she missed numerous career opportunities. Financially, she was frequently destitute despite her immense talent, often performing in small clubs just to fund her habit. Her weight fluctuated dramatically, at times exceeding 400 pounds as food became another addiction. Her relationship suffered similar turbulence, though her marriage to Artis Mills endured despite his serving a 10-year prison sentence for a drug charge that James always maintained was actually hers. Unlike many on this list, James achieved substantial recovery in her later years. Following a 1988 stint at the Betty Ford Center, she enjoyed a remarkable career resurgence, winning her first Grammy Award in 1994 for the album Mystery Lady. Her 1995 autobiography, Rage to Survive, offered an unflinching account of her struggles with addiction while celebrating her musical journey. Though health problems including leukemia, dementia, and hepatitis C, likely contracted through intravenous drug use, ultimately led to her death in 2012 at age 73, her final decades represented a triumph over the substances that had nearly destroyed her. James's legacy has only grown since her death. Beyoncé's portrayal of her in the 2008 film Cadillac Records introduced her to younger audiences, while her induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993 cemented her status as an American musical icon. Most importantly, her vocal approach, blending technical precision with raw emotional honesty, continues to influence singers across genres, making her one of the most enduring vocal stylists in popular music history. Ozzy Osbourne. The Prince of Darkness emerged from working-class Birmingham, England, to become heavy metal's ultimate survivor and cautionary tale. Born John Michael Osbourne in 1948, Ozzy first gained fame as the original vocalist for pioneering heavy metal band Black Sabbath. His distinctive wail on classics like Paranoid, Iron Man, and War Pigs helped define metal's vocal aesthetic, while his onstage persona, part horror movie villain, part vulnerable everyman, established a template for generations of metal frontmen. Osbourne's relationship with substances began early and escalated dramatically during Black Sabbath's rise to fame. Alcohol, cocaine, and prescription medications became constant companions, fueling increasingly erratic behavior that eventually led to his firing from Black Sabbath in 1979. During his subsequent solo career, his consumption reached mythic proportions. By his own admission, he was taking 10 pills a day, plus cocaine, plus alcohol, plus whatever else was available. His binges became legendary, including incidents where he snorted a line of ants and bit the head off a live bat, thinking it was rubber, during concerts. This infamous 1982 footage shows an intoxicated Ozzy urinating on the Alamo Cenotaph in San Antonio, Texas, leading to his arrest and a decade-long ban from performing in the city. The consequences of Osbourne's addiction were severe and wide-ranging. His health deteriorated significantly, with seizures becoming common occurrences. His behavior became increasingly unpredictable, including a 1989 incident where he attempted to strangle his wife and manager Sharon while blackout drunk. Professionally, his reputation for unreliability threatened to overshadow his musical contributions, while financially, Much of his considerable earnings went to supporting his habits. Osbourne's recovery journey has been as dramatic as his addiction. Following the strangling incident, he got sober and remained largely clean for many years, though he has experienced relapses. His family life, once in shambles, became the subject of the pioneering reality show, The Osbournes, which presented an unvarnished look at a family dealing with the aftermath of addiction. In recent years, Osbourne has faced significant health challenges, including Parkinson's disease and multiple surgeries, some likely related to the physical toll of his years of substance abuse. Despite, or perhaps because of, his struggles, Osbourne has achieved iconic status in popular culture. His annual Ozzfest tour helped launch countless metal bands, while his musical influence spans generations and genres. His willingness to speak openly about his addiction and mental health issues has helped destigmatize these conversations in the often macho world of heavy metal. Now, in his 70s, Ozzy stands as living proof that even the most severe addiction can be overcome, even if the consequences can never be fully escaped. Whitney Houston, the greatest voice of her generation, was silenced far too soon by the demons of addiction. Born in 1963 in Newark, New Jersey, Whitney Houston possessed a vocal instrument of unparalleled power, range, and control. Her renditions of songs like I Will Always Love You, The Greatest Love of All, and I Wanna Dance with Somebody set new standards for vocal performance in popular music. With over 200 million records sold worldwide, Houston became one of the best-selling music artists of all time and the most awarded female artist by Guinness World Records. Houston's relationship with substances reportedly began in the late 1980s and escalated dramatically during her marriage to R&B singer Bobby Brown. Though she had maintained a pristine public image early in her career, by the late 1990s, Houston was regularly using cocaine, marijuana, and prescription medications. In a notorious 2002 interview with Diane Sawyer, she famously declared, "Crack is whack," while denying using the drug, though she later admitted to extensive cocaine use in a 2009 interview with Oprah Winfrey. This heartbreaking 2001 performance at Michael Jackson's 30th anniversary celebration shows Houston alarmingly thin and struggling vocally, clear evidence of how drugs had begun to damage her once perfect instrument. The consequences of Houston's addiction were devastating and played out painfully in public. Her once transcendent voice deteriorated noticeably, with her 2009 comeback album, I Look to You, revealing an instrument damaged by years of smoking and drug use. Her behavior became increasingly erratic, including missed performances and bizarre public appearances. Her 2005 reality show, Being Bobby Brown, presented an uncomfortable portrait of a couple in the throes of addiction. Financially, despite her enormous success, she faced significant problems as her career opportunities dwindled and her drug expenses mounted. Houston made multiple attempts at recovery, including several stints in rehabilitation facilities. However, on February 11, 2012, she was found unconscious in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel and pronounced dead at the scene. The coroner's report listed drowning as the cause of death, with heart disease and cocaine use as contributing factors. The tragic parallels continued when, 3 years later, her daughter Bobby Christina Brown was found unconscious in a bathtub and died after months in a coma, her system also containing drugs. Houston's legacy transcends her tragic end. Her technical brilliance as a vocalist continues to influence generations of singers across all genres. Her acting performance in The Bodyguard helped break barriers for Black actresses in Hollywood. Most poignantly, her struggle with addiction has become part of a larger conversation about the pressures faced by performers, particularly women of color, in an industry that often values commercial appeal over personal well-being. The 2018 documentary Whitney offered a nuanced portrait of her life and struggles, ensuring that her story is remembered for its complexity rather than merely its tragic conclusion. Amy Winehouse. With her beehive hairdo, cat-eye makeup, and voice that channeled decades of soul and jazz tradition, Amy Winehouse revitalized retro sounds for the 21st century while living a tragically abbreviated life straight out of a blues song. Born in 1983 in London to a Jewish family with a history of jazz musicians, Winehouse burst onto the international scene with her 2006 album, Back to Black. Its raw examinations of destructive relationships and addiction proving eerily prophetic of her own fate. Winehouse's relationship with substances began in her teens with cannabis, but escalated dramatically following her rise to fame. By 2005, she was using crack cocaine and heroin, often simultaneously in the form of speedballs. Her drinking was equally problematic. She favored a self-invented cocktail called Rick Stacy, combining vodka, Southern Comfort, banana liqueur, and Baileys. These substances fueled the creation of songs like Rehab, in which she famously refused treatment, but ultimately consumed both her career and her life. This heartbreaking 2008 performance at the Glastonbury Festival shows Winehouse visibly intoxicated and struggling through Rehab, the song that both made her famous and foreshadowed her demise. The consequences of Winehouse's addiction played out brutally in the public eye, exacerbated by relentless tabloid coverage. Her performances became increasingly erratic, with numerous cancellations and onstage meltdowns. Her once curvaceous frame withered to skeletal proportions. Her turbulent relationship with Blake Fielder Civil, who admitted introducing her to crack cocaine and heroin, created a toxic codependency that fueled her most powerful music but accelerated her decline. Despite 5 Grammy Awards and critical acclaim, her career effectively stalled after Back to Black as she became unable to create consistently. Winehouse made multiple attempts at recovery, including several stays at rehabilitation facilities. She achieved periods of sobriety, particularly after her divorce from Fielder Civil in 2009, but these proved temporary. On July 23, 2011, after a period of abstaining from drugs but drinking heavily, Winehouse was found dead in her London home. The coroner's verdict was death by misadventure, with a blood alcohol level 5 times the legal driving limit. Like many others on this list, she died at age 27, joining the tragic 27 Club.
Winehouse's legacy extends far beyond her brief recording career. Her distinctive vocal style influenced countless singers, from Adele to Lady Gaga. Her fashion sense sparked a revival of 1960s-inspired looks. Most importantly, her struggles highlighted the dangerous intersection of mental health issues, addiction, and fame in the social media age. The 2015 documentary, Amy, presented a devastating portrait of a young woman whose extraordinary talent made her famous but couldn't save her from the demons that ultimately consumed her.
Michael Jackson, the king of pop's descent into prescription drug dependency, represents one of music's most tragic falls from grace. Born in 1958 in Gary, Indiana, Michael Jackson transformed from child prodigy with the Jackson 5 to the most famous entertainer on the planet. His albums Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad revolutionized popular music, while his dancing, fashion, and theatrical presentations set new standards for performance across all genres. Jackson's relationship with prescription medications reportedly began after he suffered second-degree burns while filming a 1984 Pepsi commercial. The pain management for this injury introduced him to opioid painkillers, which became increasingly central to his life. By the 1990s, he was regularly using Demerol, Percocet, and later Propofol, the surgical anesthetic that would ultimately kill him. His personal physician, Conrad Murray, administered these drugs in combinations and contexts that violated standard medical practice. This footage from Jackson's This Is It rehearsals in 2009, just days before his death, shows him remarkably vital despite the cocktail of prescription medications that would soon claim his life. The consequences of Jackson's prescription drug dependency were far-reaching. His behavior became increasingly erratic, contributing to the public perception issues that plagued his later career. His appearance changed dramatically through multiple plastic surgeries, potentially influenced by medication-altered self-perception. Professionally, his output slowed significantly after 1991's Dangerous, with just 2 studio albums released in the final 18 years of his life. His financial situation deteriorated despite his enormous wealth, as his lifestyle and medical expenses mounted. Unlike many on this list, Jackson never publicly acknowledged a substance abuse problem, and those in his inner circle often enabled rather than challenged his medication use. On June 25, 2009, Jackson suffered cardiac arrest at his rented mansion in Los Angeles and was pronounced dead at the hospital. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled his death a homicide, primarily caused by propofol intoxication. Conrad Murray was subsequently convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served 2 years in prison. Jackson's legacy remains complex and contested. His musical innovations, from the extended music video to the fusion of R&B with rock and electronic elements, continue to influence artists across genres. His humanitarian work, particularly with children's charities, represented a significant part of his life's work. However, allegations of child sexual abuse, though never resulting in criminal conviction, have complicated his posthumous reputation. The 2019 documentary Leaving Neverland reignited these controversies, creating ongoing debates about separating artistic achievement from personal behavior. Through it all, the role of prescription medication in enabling his isolation and eccentric behavior remains a crucial but often overlooked aspect of his tragic story. Kurt Cobain. The reluctant voice of Generation X, Kurt Cobain transformed alternative rock from underground phenomenon to global movement while struggling with both addiction and the fame it brought him. Born in 1967 in Aberdeen, Washington, Cobain formed Nirvana and created a revolutionary sound that blended punk's raw energy with pop's melodic sensibilities. The band's breakthrough 1991 album, Nevermind, dethroned Michael Jackson on the Billboard charts, announcing a seismic shift in popular music away from the polish of the 1980s towards something more authentic and abrasive. Cobain's relationship with heroin began around 1986, initially as self-medication for a chronic stomach condition that caused him intense pain throughout his life. By 1991, as Nirvana achieved unexpected mainstream success, his usage had developed into full-blown addiction. Though he attempted to hide his habit, his gaunt appearance, erratic behavior, and frequent illnesses betrayed the severity of his condition. Cobain made multiple attempts at rehabilitation, including a stay at the Exodus Recovery Center in Los Angeles just weeks before his death. This haunting performance of Where Did You Sleep Last Night from Nirvana's 1993 MTV Unplugged session, recorded months before Cobain's suicide, captures the raw emotional intensity that made him the voice of his generation. The consequences of Cobain's addiction were severe and ultimately fatal. His health deteriorated significantly, with frequent respiratory and digestive issues. His relationship with wife Courtney Love, herself struggling with addiction, became increasingly volatile. Professionally, despite Nirvana's enormous success, his reliability issues created tensions within the band and with record company executives. Most significantly, his addiction exacerbated his pre-existing depression and suicidal ideation, creating a perfect storm of emotional distress. On April 5, 1994, after escaping from a rehabilitation facility and purchasing a shotgun, Cobain took his own life at his Seattle home. His suicide note, addressed to his childhood imaginary friend Bada, expressed his disillusionment with music and inability to experience joy despite his success. Like many others on this list, he died at age 27, joining the tragic 27 Club alongside Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and later Amy Winehouse. Cobain's legacy extends far beyond Nirvana's brief recording career. His songwriting approach, combining dissonance with melody, personal pain with universal themes, influenced countless artists across genres. His fashion sense, flannel shirts, ripped jeans, Converse sneakers, defined a generation's aesthetic. Most importantly, his struggles with addiction and mental health helped destigmatize these issues, particularly among young men for whom emotional vulnerability had previously been taboo. Though he feared being remembered as the guy who killed himself, Cobain is instead remembered as the artist who made authenticity the central value of alternative culture. Layne Staley. The voice of grunge's darkest corner, Layne Staley's haunting vocals with Alice in Chains chronicled his descent into heroin addiction with unflinching honesty. Born in 1967 in Kirkland, Washington, Staley co-founded Alice in Chains in 1987, helping pioneer the Seattle sound alongside Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden. His distinctive voice, capable of both melodic beauty and harrowing screams, perfectly complemented guitarist Jerry Cantrell's heavy riffs and mournful harmonies on classics like Man in the Box, Rooster, and Wood. Staley's relationship with heroin began in the early 1990s as Alice in Chains achieved commercial success. Unlike some who hid their addiction, Staley incorporated his experiences directly into his lyrics, creating what amounted to a real-time chronicle of his deterioration. Songs like Junkhead, Godsmack, and Dirt offered unsparing examinations of addiction's grip, with lines like, "What's my drug of choice? Well, what have you got?" revealing a fatalistic awareness of his condition. Despite multiple attempts at rehabilitation, Staley never achieved lasting sobriety. This powerful 1996 MTV Unplugged performance represents one of Staley's final public appearances. His emaciated frame and damaged teeth, visible evidence of heroin's devastating effects. The consequences of Staley's addiction were comprehensive and devastating. By 1995, Alice in Chains could no longer tour regularly due to his condition. The band's MTV Unplugged performance in April 1996 marked one of his last public appearances, with Staley visibly emaciated and damaged. Following the death of his fiancée Demry Parrott from bacterial endocarditis related to her own drug use in October 1996, Staley withdrew almost completely from public life, becoming a recluse in his Seattle condominium. For the last 5 years of his life, Staley rarely left his apartment, subsisting primarily on a diet of ensured nutritional supplements and continued drug use. On April 19, 2002, after his accountants noticed no activity in his accounts, police discovered Staley's body in his condo. The medical examiner estimated he had died approximately 2 weeks earlier, on April 5th. Eerily, the same date as Kurt Cobain's suicide 8 years prior. The cause was an overdose of heroin and cocaine, with his body weighing just 86 pounds at death. Staley's legacy, like his music, is beautiful and tragic in equal measure. His vocal techniques influenced countless singers across rock and metal. His willingness to address addiction directly in his lyrics helped destigmatize conversations about substance abuse in popular music. Most poignantly, the music he created with Alice in Chains continues to resonate with those struggling with addiction and mental health issues, offering both a warning and a sense of being understood. As bandmate Jerry Cantrell observed, "That's the sad thing about addiction. The damage is done long before the death." Scott Weiland, the chameleon-like frontman of Stone Temple Pilots and Velvet Revolver, Scott Weiland's powerful voice and magnetic stage presence were repeatedly undermined by his battles with addiction. Born in 1967 in San Jose, California, Weiland helped define the post-grunge sound of the 1990s with STP hits like Plush, Interstate Love Song, and Vaseline. His ability to shift vocal styles and personas made him one of rock's most versatile performers, while his lyrics often explored themes of alienation, relationship dysfunction, and substance abuse. Weiland's relationship with substances began in his teens and escalated dramatically following Stone Temple Pilots' breakthrough success in 1992. Though he experimented with various drugs, heroin and crack cocaine became his primary substances of choice, leading to multiple arrests and stints in rehabilitation. His addiction created a cycle of recovery and relapse that would define the remainder of his life and career, with periods of sobriety followed by devastating returns to active use. This 2010 performance with Stone Temple Pilots shows Weiland during a period of relative stability, displaying the charismatic stage presence and vocal power that made him one of rock's most compelling frontmen. The consequences of Weiland's addiction were severe and far-reaching. His unreliability led to the breakup of Stone Temple Pilots multiple times and his firing from supergroup Velvet Revolver in 2008. Legal troubles mounted, including a 1995 arrest for attempting to buy crack cocaine and a 2003 arrest for DUI after a car accident. His marriages to Janina Castaneda and Mary Forsberg ended in divorce, with Forsberg's memoir, Fall to Pieces, detailing the chaos of life with an addict. Professionally, despite his enormous talent, Weiland's reputation for unreliability increasingly overshadowed his musical contributions. Unlike many on this list, Weiland achieved significant periods of sobriety throughout his career, allowing for creative resurgences, including successful reunions with Stone Temple Pilots and the formation of Velvet Revolver. However, on December 3, 2015, Weiland was found dead on his tour bus in Bloomington, Minnesota, while touring with his band, the Wildabouts. The medical examiner determined the cause as an accidental overdose of cocaine, ethanol, and methylene-deoxyamphetamine, MDA, complicated by asthma, cardiovascular disease, and a history of substance dependence.
Weiland's legacy remains defined by both his artistic brilliance and his struggles with addiction. His vocal versatility influenced countless singers who followed, while his willingness to experiment with different musical styles helped expand the sonic possibilities of alternative rock. In death, as in life, he represents the complex interplay between creative brilliance and personal demons that has claimed so many musical innovators. As his ex-wife Mary Forsberg wrote in an open letter after his death, "Let's choose to make this the first time we don't glorify this tragedy with talk of rock and roll and the demons that, by the way, don't have to come with it."
Britney Spears, the princess of pop's battles with substances, became inextricably linked with her mental health struggles and the controversial conservatorship that controlled her life for 13 years. Born in 1981 in Macomb, Mississippi, Spears revolutionized pop music in the late 1990s with her debut single, Baby One More Time, and subsequent hits like Oops, I Did It Again, Toxic, and Womanizer. Her blend of dance pop production, provocative imagery, and the girl next door persona made her one of the best-selling music artists of all time, with over 100 million records sold worldwide. Spears' relationship with substances became public during her highly publicized breakdown in 2007 to 2008. Following her divorce from Kevin Federline and amid an intense custody battle for her two sons, Spears was frequently photographed partying with Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan, appearing intoxicated in public. Reports indicated use of alcohol, cocaine, and prescription medications, particularly Adderall and various sedatives. Her behavior became increasingly erratic, culminating in the infamous head-shaving incident and attack on a paparazzo's car with an umbrella. This infamous 2007 MTV Video Music Awards performance of Gimme More shows Spears disoriented and struggling to perform, a public manifestation of her substance abuse and mental health crisis. The consequences of Spears' substance issues became intertwined with her mental health struggles and led directly to the establishment of a conservatorship in 2008, with her father, Jamie Spears, given control over her person and estate. This legal arrangement, ostensibly created to protect her from self-harm and exploitation, ultimately became a controversial mechanism that denied her basic autonomy for over a decade. During this period, she was reportedly subjected to involuntary medication, forced to perform against her will, and denied the right to make personal decisions, including about her reproductive health. Unlike many on this list, Spears' story includes a significant element of external control over her substance use. Court documents from the conservatorship battle revealed that she was subjected to regular drug testing and denied access to even moderate substances like caffeine. While this prevented the kind of tragic overdose that claimed other artists, it came at the cost of her personal freedom. Only after the Free Britney movement gained traction and public scrutiny intensified did the courts finally terminate the conservatorship in November 2021. Spears' legacy extends beyond her musical achievements to include her role in highlighting the potential for abuse in conservatorships and the treatment of mental health in the public eye. Her 2023 memoir, The Woman in Me, revealed previously unknown details about her experiences, including being forced into a mental health facility in 2019 after objecting to changes in her medication. While her substance issues were real, they became weaponized as justification for controlling her life and finances in ways that raised serious ethical and legal questions. Her ongoing recovery represents not just a personal journey, but a public reckoning with how society treats celebrities in crisis. Demi Lovato, from Disney Channel star to outspoken advocate for mental health and addiction recovery, Demi Lovato's journey represents one of the most transparent battles with substance abuse in contemporary pop music. Born in 1992 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Lovato rose to fame through roles in Camp Rock and Sunny with a Chance before establishing a successful music career with hits like Sorry Not Sorry, Heart Attack, and Skyscraper. Their powerful vocals and emotional vulnerability have made them a voice for a generation struggling with similar issues. Lovato's relationship with substances began in their teens, exacerbated by childhood trauma, bullying, and the pressures of early fame. By age 17, they were using cocaine regularly, later adding alcohol, opioids, and other drugs to self-medicate undiagnosed bipolar disorder and ongoing eating disorders. Despite entering treatment in 2010 after a physical altercation with a dancer on tour, Lovato continued to struggle, later revealing they were under the influence during interviews promoting sobriety and even performed on American Idol while high.
This raw, emotional performance of Sober from June 2018 shows Lovato openly acknowledging their relapse just 1 month before their near-fatal overdose.
The consequences of Lovato's addiction culminated on July 24, 2018, when they suffered a near-fatal overdose involving oxycodone laced with fentanyl. The overdose caused 3 strokes, a heart attack, and brain damage that left lasting vision problems. As Lovato revealed in their 2021 documentary, Dancing with the Devil, they had been sexually assaulted by their dealer that night. The severity of this incident marked a turning point in their recovery journey, though they later adopted a California sober approach, using marijuana and alcohol moderately, before eventually committing to complete sobriety in late 2021. Unlike many artists who struggled in earlier eras, Lovato has benefited from evolving attitudes toward addiction and mental health. Their willingness to document their recovery journey through music, interviews, and documentaries has been met largely with support rather than stigma. Songs like Sober, which acknowledged a relapse, and Anyone, written days before their overdose, offer unfiltered glimpses into the mind of someone battling addiction, while their advocacy work has helped countless fans facing similar struggles. Lovato's legacy as both an artist and advocate continues to evolve. Their 2021 album, Dancing with the Devil, The Art of Starting Over, and accompanying documentary represented a creative rebirth, while their exploration of gender identity, coming out as non-binary in 2021, demonstrated the complex interrelationship between substance abuse, trauma, and self-discovery. By sharing their story with radical honesty, Lovato has helped transform the conversation around addiction from one of shame and secrecy to one of compassion and understanding. Mac Miller, a prodigiously talented rapper, producer, and multi-instrumentalist whose artistic evolution was cut short by addiction, Mac Miller created a body of work that chronicled his struggles with remarkable candor. Born Malcolm James McCormick in 1992 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Miller rose to prominence as a teenage rap phenom before evolving into one of hip-hop's most introspective and musically adventurous voices. Albums like Swimming and the posthumously released Circles revealed an artist pushing genre boundaries while exploring themes of depression, substance abuse, and the search for meaning. Miller's relationship with substances began in his teens with marijuana and alcohol, but escalated significantly as his fame grew. By his own admission, he developed addictions to promethazine, codeine, lean, and later cocaine and opioids. His 2014 mixtape Faces represented his most explicit examination of his drug use, with lyrics that now seem eerily prophetic. A drug habit like Philip Hoffman will probably put me in a coffin. Though he achieved periods of sobriety, particularly during his relationship with Ariana Grande, the stress of their breakup in 2018 contributed to a relapse that would ultimately prove fatal. This intimate NPR Tiny Desk concert from August 2018, just weeks before his death, shows Miller at his musical peak, performing songs from Swimming that dealt directly with his struggles. The consequences of Miller's addiction played out both in his music and his increasingly public struggles. A 2013 tour was marred by his dependence on lean, which affected his performances and health. His 2016 documentary, Stopped Making Excuses, showed him acknowledging the dangers of his lifestyle. I'd rather be the corny white rapper than the drugged-out mess who can't even get out of his house. Legally, he faced a DUI charge after crashing his car in May 2018, following his breakup with Grande. Throughout these challenges, however, his music continued to evolve in sophistication and emotional depth. On September 7, 2018, Miller was found unresponsive in his Studio City home and pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner determined the cause as an accidental overdose of fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol. The counterfeit oxycodone pills containing fentanyl that caused his death led to criminal charges against his drug dealer, who eventually pleaded guilty to distribution of fentanyl. Miller was just 26 with his final album Circles nearly complete at the time of his death. Miller's legacy has only grown since his passing. The posthumous release of Circles, completed by producer John Bryan based on their work together, revealed the artistic directions he was exploring. His influence on a generation of artists who blend hip-hop with other genres remains profound. Perhaps most importantly, the honesty with which he documented his struggles in songs like Self-Care, Good News, and Come Back to Earth created a body of work that continues to provide solace to listeners facing similar battles. As he rapped on Perfect Circle, H. Godspeed, "They don't want me to OD and have to talk to my mother telling her they could have done more to help me." Prince. The Purple One's secret battle with pain medication revealed the dangers of prescription drug abuse even among the most disciplined and health-conscious artists. Born Prince Rogers Nelson in 1958 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Prince revolutionized popular music through his virtuosic instrumental skills, genre-blending compositions, and boundary-pushing performances. With albums like Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, and 1999, he created a singular musical universe that combined funk, rock, R&B, and pop into something entirely his own. Unlike many artists on this list, Prince's relationship with substances came late in his career and stemmed directly from legitimate medical issues. A lifetime of athletic stage performances, including his famous splits and high jumps while wearing heeled boots, led to chronic hip and ankle pain, reportedly exacerbated by his refusal to undergo corrective surgery due to his Jehovah's Witness faith's restrictions on blood transfusions. To manage this pain, he began using prescription opioids, particularly fentanyl, which would ultimately lead to his accidental overdose. This electrifying 2007 Super Bowl halftime show performance, often considered the greatest in the event's history, demonstrates Prince's extraordinary physical abilities that likely contributed to the chronic pain he later medicated with opioids. The secretive nature of Prince's personality meant that the extent of his dependency remained hidden from all but his closest associates. Unlike artists who publicly struggled with addiction, Prince maintained his prolific work schedule and professional image until the end. In the weeks before his death, however, signs of trouble emerged. On April 15, 2016, his private plane made an emergency landing in Moline, Illinois, where he was reportedly administered Narcan, naloxone, an emergency treatment for opioid overdose. He performed a concert the following day, showing his remarkable resilience, but also potentially masking the severity of his condition. On April 21, 2016, Prince was found unresponsive in an elevator at his Paisley Park compound in Chanhassen, Minnesota. Despite emergency responders' attempts at CPR, he was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner later determined the cause as an accidental overdose of fentanyl. Subsequent investigation revealed numerous pills in his residence, including counterfeit Vicodin tablets that contained fentanyl, suggesting he may not have been aware of the potency of what he was taking. Prince's legacy extends far beyond the circumstances of his death. His mastery of multiple instruments, prolific output, including numerous unreleased recordings in his famous vault, and boundary-pushing approach to both music and the business of music continue to influence artists across genres. His tragic end, however, highlighted the dangers of prescription opioids and the opioid crisis that was claiming lives across America, regardless of fame or fortune. As his friend and collaborator Sheila E. noted, "This is what happens when you're in pain and you're alone and you don't know how to ask for help." Lil Peep, a pioneer of emo rap who blended hip-hop with alternative rock influences, Lil Peep's brief career and tragic death embodied the dangers facing a new generation of artists navigating fame in the SoundCloud era. Born Gustav Orr in 1996 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Peep gained a devoted following through self-released mixtapes that combined trap beats with samples from bands like Modest Mouse and the Postal Service. His vulnerable lyrics addressing depression, anxiety, and substance abuse resonated deeply with young listeners navigating similar struggles. Peep's relationship with substances was extensively documented in both his music and social media presence. He openly discussed using Xanax, cocaine, and other drugs, often portraying them as self-medication for depression and anxiety rather than recreational use. Songs like 16 Lines of Blow and I'm Fine, and You Said, Sometimes Life Gets Fucked Up, That's Why We Get Fucked Up, directly referenced his drug use, while his Instagram frequently showed him using various substances. This transparency, while honest, normalized dangerous behaviors for his young audience. This performance of Awful Things from Peep's final tour shows his unique charisma and the emotional connection he formed with audiences despite his visibly intoxicated state. The consequences of Peep's polydrug use became increasingly apparent as his fame grew. His performances could be erratic, with videos showing him barely able to stand or slurring his words on stage. Friends and collaborators expressed concern about his deteriorating condition, particularly as the demands of touring intensified. Despite these warning signs, the independent nature of his career meant he lacked the support systems that might have intervened effectively. On November 15, 2017, Peep was found dead on his tour bus before a scheduled performance in Tucson, Arizona. The medical examiner determined the cause as an accidental overdose of fentanyl and alprazolam, Xanax. Subsequent investigation revealed he had taken counterfeit Xanax pills that contained fentanyl, unaware of their lethal potential. He was just 21 years old, with his debut studio album, Come Over When You're Sober Part 1 Inch, having been released only months earlier. Despite his brief career, Peep's legacy has proven substantial and enduring. His genre-blending approach helped legitimize the emotional vulnerability of emo within hip-hop contexts, influencing artists like Juice WRLD, XXXTentacion, and Post Malone. The documentary, Everybody's Everything, executive produced by Terrence Malick, presented a nuanced portrait of his life and impact. Perhaps most importantly, his death brought increased attention to the dangers of counterfeit prescription medications and the fentanyl crisis that continues to claim young lives. As his mother, Liza Womack, noted, he was an icon of beautiful vulnerability in a time when vulnerability is demonized. Juice WRLD. A freestyling prodigy whose music addressed mental health struggles and substance abuse with disarming honesty, Juice WRLD's meteoric rise and tragic death mirrored the very demons he chronicled in his songs. Born Jared Anthony Higgins in 1998 in Chicago, Illinois, Juice emerged from the SoundCloud rap scene to achieve mainstream success with hits like Lucid Dreams, All Girls Are the Same, and Robbery. His unique blend of hip-hop, emo, and pop, combined with an extraordinary ability to freestyle for hours, made him one of the most promising voices of his generation. Juice's relationship with substances began in early adolescence, influenced by both the hip-hop culture he admired and as self-medication for depression and anxiety. By his own admission, he started using lean, a combination of codeine, cough syrup, and soda, in 6th grade, later adding Percocet and Xanax to his regular consumption. His music directly addressed these habits in songs like Lean With Me, and Hurt Me, creating an unusually transparent document of addiction that resonated with fans facing similar struggles. This remarkable hour-long freestyle on Tim Westwood TV from 2018 demonstrates Juice WRLD's extraordinary talent and improvisational abilities, even as his lyrics frequently reference the substances that would ultimately claim his life. The consequences of Juice's substance use were largely hidden from public view until his death, as his natural charisma and professional work ethic allowed him to maintain his career momentum despite his addictions. Behind the scenes, however, friends and collaborators witnessed his increasing dependence, particularly on prescription medications. In the documentary Into the Abyss, released posthumously, footage shows him swallowing multiple pills at once, revealing the severity of his habit that was often glamorized in his lyrics.
On December 8, 2019, law enforcement awaited Juice's private plane at Chicago's Midway Airport based on information that drugs and weapons might be on board. According to witnesses, Juice swallowed multiple Percocet pills in an attempt to hide them from authorities. Shortly afterward, he began convulsing and seizing. Despite being administered Narcan and transported to a hospital, he was pronounced dead. The medical examiner determined the cause as an accidental overdose of oxycodone and codeine. He was just 21, with his second studio album, Death Race for Love, having topped the Billboard charts earlier that year.
Juice WRLD's legacy continues to grow posthumously, with his music finding new audiences and unreleased material appearing on albums like Legends Never Die and Fighting Demons. His influence on combining emotional vulnerability with hip-hop has transformed the genre's willingness to address mental health issues directly. Perhaps most poignantly, his prediction in the 2018 song Legends, "What's the 27 Club? We ain't making it past 21," proved tragically prophetic, making him a symbol of a generation facing unprecedented mental health challenges and access to dangerous substances. Marianne Faithfull. The quintessential survivor whose 6-decade career encompasses both the heights of 1960s fame and the depths of addiction, Marianne Faithfull transformed from pop ingenue to respected artistic voice despite years lost to heroin. Born in 1946 in London to an Austrian baroness and a British intelligence officer, Faithfull first gained fame as a fresh-faced folk pop singer with 1964's As Tears Go By before becoming a central figure in the Rolling Stones circle and swinging London scene. Faithfull's relationship with substances began in the mid-1960s with cannabis and LSD, typical of her countercultural milieu, but escalated dramatically following her breakup with Mick Jagger in 1970. Devastated by the end of their high-profile relationship and a custody battle for her son Nicholas, she developed a severe heroin addiction that would dominate the next decade of her life. By 1971, she was homeless in Soho, living on the streets despite her recent fame and aristocratic background. This 1979 performance of Broken English shows Faithfull's remarkable transformation from 1960s pop singer to post-punk icon, her voice now ravaged by years of heroin use and cigarettes, but conveying a hard-won authenticity. The consequences of Faithfull's addiction were severe and wide-ranging. Her once delicate soprano was permanently transformed into a distinctive rasp due to laryngitis, bronchitis, and heavy smoking during her years on the streets. She developed hepatitis C from intravenous drug use, which would later necessitate a liver transplant. Professionally, she disappeared from public view for much of the 1970s, her early promise seemingly squandered. Personally, her relationship with her son was severely damaged, and she attempted suicide at least once during this period. Unlike many on this list, Faithfull achieved a remarkable recovery and artistic renaissance. Her 1979 comeback album, Broken English, transformed her ravaged voice into an instrument of raw authenticity, earning critical acclaim and establishing her as a serious artist rather than merely Jagger's former girlfriend. Though she relapsed into cocaine use in the 1980s, she eventually achieved lasting sobriety and produced a body of work including Strange Weather, Before the Poison, and Negative Capability that ranks among the most respected in popular music. Now in her mid-70s and having survived COVID-19, which temporarily affected her ability to sing, Faithfull represents an inspiring counter-narrative to the tragic overdoses that claim so many artists. Her memoir, Faithfull, offers an unflinching account of her addiction without glamorizing it, while her continued artistic evolution demonstrates the possibilities of recovery. As she told The Guardian in 2018, "I'm not a survivor, I'm a warrior. Survivors are people who manage to get through terrible things, but a warrior is different. You're marked by what happened, but you use it." David Bowie. The Thin White Duke's cocaine-fueled period in the mid-1970s represents one of music's most creative yet disturbing chapters of substance abuse. Born David Robert Jones in 1947 in London, Bowie revolutionized popular music through his chameleonic personas, genre experimentation, and theatrical presentations. Albums like The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust, Station to Station, and Low repeatedly redefined the possibilities of rock music while influencing fashion, sexual politics, and visual presentation across popular culture. Bowie's relationship with cocaine began around 1974, during the final phase of his Ziggy Stardust period, but escalated dramatically during his Los Angeles period years of 1975 to 1976. By his own later admission, his cocaine use during this period was so severe that he barely remembered recording the album Station to Station. His diet reportedly consisted primarily of peppers, milk, and cocaine, reducing him to skeletal thinness. This physical deterioration coincided with his adoption of the Thin White Duke persona, a cold, Aryan-inspired character that reflected his increasingly disturbed mental state. This 1976 performance of Station to Station captures Bowie at the height of his cocaine addiction, his skeletal frame and manic energy embodying the disturbing Thin White Duke persona.
The consequences of Bowie's cocaine psychosis manifested in disturbing ways. He became obsessed with occultism, storing his urine in the refrigerator to prevent witches from using it against him. His political statements veered toward fascism, including a notorious incident where he appeared to give a Nazi salute at Victoria Station, which he later attributed to a photographer catching him mid-wave. Most concerningly, his mental health deteriorated to the point of paranoid delusions about Jimmy Page trying to invade his mind and fears that bodies would fall past his window.
Unlike many on this list, Bowie recognized the severity of his condition and took dramatic action. In 1976, he left Los Angeles for Berlin, where, with the help of friend and collaborator Iggy Pop, he gradually reduced his cocaine use and rebuilt his physical and mental health. The resulting Berlin trilogy of albums, Low, Heroes, and Lodger, transformed his cocaine-induced breakdown into extraordinary art that explored themes of division, isolation, and healing. Bowie maintained sobriety for most of his subsequent career, occasionally drinking but avoiding the substances that had nearly destroyed him. His later work, particularly his final album Black Star, released 2 days before his death from liver cancer in 2016, demonstrated continued artistic innovation and personal growth. Rather than being defined by his period of addiction, Bowie incorporated it into his larger narrative of transformation and reinvention, making it just one of many phases in a kaleidoscopic career that continually pushed boundaries until the very end. The 25 artists examined in this exploration represent more than cautionary tales or sensationalized accounts of excess. Their stories reveal the complex interplay between artistic brilliance and human vulnerability, how the same sensitivity that allows musicians to channel raw emotion into transcendent art can leave them susceptible to substances that promise relief, enhancement, or escape. From Elvis Presley's prescription drug dependency to Juice WRLD's prophetic lyrics about not making it past 21, these narratives span generations and genres, yet share common threads. Many use substances to self-medicate physical pain, mental health conditions, or childhood trauma. Others fell victim to industry cultures that normalized or even encouraged destructive behaviors. Some, like Marianne Faithfull and David Bowie, managed to transform their darkest periods into artistic rebirth, while others like Amy Winehouse and Mac Miller left us wondering what might have been had they found sustainable recovery. The evolution of these stories over time reveals changing attitudes toward addiction. Earlier artists often faced moral condemnation rather than medical understanding, while contemporary figures benefit from increased awareness of addiction as a disease rather than a character flaw. Yet the continued loss of brilliant young musicians to substances suggests that fame, creativity, and vulnerability remain a potentially lethal combination. What ultimately emerges from these accounts is not glamorization, but humanization. Behind the iconic performances, legendary recordings, and tabloid headlines were individuals struggling with the universal human experiences of pain, isolation, and the search for connection. Their music continues to resonate precisely because it channels these struggles into art that helps listeners feel less alone in their own battles. As fans, critics, and fellow humans, we can honor these artists not by ignoring the darker aspects of their stories, but by understanding them in their full complexity, celebrating their artistic contributions while acknowledging the devastating impact of addiction. In doing so, perhaps we can help create a culture where the next generation of musical innovators might find healthier ways to channel their brilliance without paying the ultimate price. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the 25 worst junkies in music history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more juicy industry secrets and artist exposés. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Sisqó's career and what you think really happened. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the 25 worst junkies in music history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more juicy industry secrets and artist exposés. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on what you think really happened. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.